It was the winter of 1966. At Chicago O'Hare, the evening sky was a sheet of frozen steel. Wind cut across the tarmac, tossing powdery snow into spirals that danced beneath the floodlights. Inside Gate 23, passengers of TransAmerican Flight 609 waited quietly, coats wrapped tight, breath visible in the air every time the doors opened. The flight was bound for Denver. Routine. 2 hours over the plains and the rising shoulders of the Rockies. But the forecasts all said the same thing. A low-pressure system moving fast out of Kansas. Snow bands thick enough to bury roads and freeze engines. Still, the schedule held. Planes flew through worse, they said. Captain Warren Ellis, 47, veteran of the Air Force and 10 years on commercial routes, signed the logbook with a steady hand. His co-pilot, Dan Mercer, 31, younger, restless, checked the radar again. The green screen flickered like a heartbeat. Pockets of weather drifted and merged, small dots gathering into a solid wall. "Looks rough out there," Mercer said. Ellis smiled without humor. "Rough we can handle. Empty seats we can't." At 7:42 p.m., tower clearance came through. TransAmerican 609, cleared for takeoff. Runway 27 left, engines rose from a low growl to a full-throated roar. The cabin trembled. Coffee cups rattled. Passengers leaned back as the aircraft accelerated, tires hissing against the wet runway. The moment it lifted, the lights of Chicago blurred into a field of gold and vanished behind a curtain of snow. Inside the cockpit, everything was the color of metal and shadow. Dials glowed faint orange. Radio static crackled. "Denver Center, this is Flight 609 climbing through 12,000. Roger. 609. Moderate turbulence ahead. Advise deviation if needed." "Copy that." The air was restless. The storm moved faster than forecast. By the time they passed Des Moines, the seatbelt sign had stayed on for 40 minutes. Pockets of air sent the plane dropping, then lifting again. Over the intercom, Ellis's calm voice said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're crossing a front. Please remain seated." A few passengers laughed quietly to ease the tension. Someone whispered a prayer. A child pressed his face to the window, watching lightning crawl inside the clouds. Back in the cabin, the attendant secured trays and checked on a woman who felt dizzy. Nothing unusual, just the rhythm of flying through weather. At 8:26 p.m., the first anomaly appeared on radar. The tower recorded a small deviation. Flight 609 turning 5 degrees north without clearance. The controller keyed his mic. "TransAmerican 609, confirm heading." A long pause. Static answered. Then Ellis's voice, faint. "We're adjusting around a cell, nothing serious." Outside, unseen to the ground, the storm had become a living thing. Needles of ice battered the fuselage. Lightning lit the clouds in sheets of white. For seconds at a time, the whole sky went blank, then dark again. Mercer checked the gauges. "We're picking up ice on number 2. Activate heat." "It's not clearing." A beat of silence. Then a loud pop, a surge through the headset like thunder but closer. The cockpit lights dimmed, then steadied. Ellis exhaled slowly. "We're fine. Keep the nose level." They were fine. For a while. 3 p.m. Controllers in Denver noted reduced signal strength from 609's transponder. They tried again. "TransAmerican 609 radio check." Nothing. Just static. A minute later, a faint carrier tone returned. A single phrase came through the snow of noise. "Requesting alternate." Then nothing. Technicians later replayed the tape a dozen times. The word after alternate was lost beneath a burst of interference. The storm widened. Winds along the Front Range topped 80 knots. Local stations warned drivers to stay off the highway. Visibility near zero. Above that chaos, 609 continued west, unseen. Passengers could not see the ground now, only the occasional flash of lightning and the dark shape of wings cutting through clouds. The hum of engines was steady but deeper, like a growl under the floor. A man in row 14 said later in an interview that he thought he heard the engines change pitch, as if the plane was climbing too fast. He never finished that interview. The recording stops before he answers the next question. 17 p.m. Radar contact fluctuated near the Colorado-Nebraska border. Controllers attempted to relay through another aircraft. No reply. 21 p.m. Last recorded transmission. A partial voice blurred by static. Unable to maintain altitude. Trying to... Then silence. For 30 seconds, the tower waited. Then they began the protocol. Repeat calls, relay attempts, emergency frequency. Nothing. Within an hour, rescue coordination centers were alerted. The Air Force joined the search by midnight. Snow still falling, visibility 20 yards. By dawn, reports came in from ranchers east of the Rockies who said they'd heard something in the night. Not an explosion? Exactly, but a deep rumble that went on and on. When the sky cleared 2 days later, aircraft scoured a 100-mile stretch of terrain. They found nothing. No debris, no fuel slick, no signal. Days became weeks. The newspapers called it the mountain vanishing. Headlines speculated: lightning strike, decompression, disintegration midair. Families waited at hotel lobbies clutching photos. Investigators mapped the flight path on a large board, red pins tracing westward until they simply stopped. One mechanic at O'Hare swore the captain had mentioned radio trouble earlier that week. A weatherman insisted the storm's electrical field could have knocked out communications. Another expert said a downdraft might have pulled the aircraft into a valley radar couldn't reach. All theories, no evidence. In February 1967, the Civil Aeronautics Board issued its summary, Flight 609, presumed lost. Cause undetermined, but the story didn't end there. That spring, a ham radio operator in Wyoming reported picking up a strange signal on an unused frequency, short bursts, repeating every 22 seconds. Some claimed it was an automatic beacon from the missing plane. Others said it was a coincidence, a reflection from a military transmitter. The signal stopped after 3 days. Then, in 1968, a climber west of Laramie found a piece of aluminum half buried in snow. It carried faint letters, 609. Analysis was inconclusive. The part could have come from any number of aircraft built that decade. Still, it reignited the legend. To this day, no verified wreckage has been recovered. Meteorologists later reconstructed the weather that night using archived satellite data. The storm over the Rockies had formed an unusual electrical pattern, 2 cells rotating opposite each other, creating what pilots call a dead zone, where compass and radar readings spin aimlessly. For 15 minutes, any plane caught inside would have been flying blind. Perhaps that is where 609 went, lost inside a spiral of wind and lightning, falling in silence to a place no one has yet found. Or perhaps it drifted far beyond its course, frozen and forgotten beneath snow that never melts. 59 years later, on certain nights, people in the foothills still talk about lights moving low through the clouds, a hum like engines, and a faint, broken voice carried on the wind. "Denver Center, this is..." Then static. The radio tapes from that night end with the controller's last call. "TransAmerican 609, you are not in radar contact. Say position." Static answers for 20 seconds. Then, one final click, and silence. The official file remains open.